I wiped the grease off my hands with an old rag, leaning against the workbench as the sun dipped behind the city skyline. Business had been slow, too slow. I had barely made enough this month to cover rent, and if things didn't pick up soon, I'd be out of a job, out of a home, and out of luck. Just as I was about to close up for the day, I heard a car screech to a stop outside my small garage. The sound of grinding metal and a stalled engine made me wince. I stepped out and saw an expensive black sports car sitting dead in the middle of the street. The driver, an incredibly beautiful young woman, was gripping the wheel, frustration clear on her face. She flung open the door and stepped out, her long hair cascading over her shoulders. She was dressed in designer clothes, and I could tell just by looking at her that she had money, a lot of it. "Hey," she called out, looking around in distress. "My car just died. I have no idea what's wrong with it." I could have ignored it, told her to call a tow truck like any other mechanic would, but something about the panic in her voice made me hesitate. I jogged over, brushing the sweat off my forehead. "Let me take a look," I said, crouching beside the car. She folded her arms. "Are you a mechanic?" I let out a chuckle. "Yeah, something like that." I popped the hood and instantly spotted the problem, a busted alternator, one that was clearly neglected for a long time. This wasn't going to be an easy fix. "Bad news," I said, standing up. "You're not driving this anywhere anytime soon. The alternator's shot. It needs to be replaced." Her face fell. "You're kidding. I have an important event tonight. I can't afford to be late." I sighed. "Look, I can fix it, but it'll take a few hours, and the part isn't cheap." She looked at me, biting her lip, clearly debating something in her mind. Then she sighed. I don't have cash on me right now. Could you fix it, and I'll pay you later?" Now, any other mechanic would have laughed in her face. People who say, "I'll pay you later," usually never do. But something in her expression, in her voice, made me pause. I looked at the sun setting behind her and then back at her car. "Fine, I'll do it. No charge." Her eyes widened. "Wait, really?" I nodded. "Yeah, you need help, and I don't like seeing people stranded." She blinked at me in surprise. Then a slow smile spread across her face. "That's really kind of you." "Yeah," I muttered, already getting to work. "Just don't forget about me when you win an award or something." She laughed. "I won't." What I didn't know was that she wasn't just some rich girl with a broken car. She was one of the biggest rising stars in the world, and my life was about to change forever. I worked on her car well into the night, pushing through exhaustion. My stomach growled, but I ignored it. I hadn't had a decent meal in days, but I wasn't about to ask for anything. As I worked, she sat nearby, watching me. I could feel her eyes on me, curious and intrigued. "You own this place?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, tightening a bolt. "Barely." She frowned. "What do you mean?" I wiped my hands. "Business has been slow. If things don't pick up soon, I'll have to close shop." Her expression softened. "I'm sorry to hear that." I shrugged. "It's life." For a moment, she was quiet. Then she asked, "Why'd you help me for free?" I chuckled. "Guess I'm just an idiot." She smiled. "I don't think so." I finished up the repairs and closed the hood. "All right, you're good to go." She stood up, looking at me with something unreadable in her gaze. Then, to my shock, she pulled out her phone. "Can I take a picture with you?" I blinked. "Oh, what?" She grinned. "I want to remember the kind mechanic who helped me for free." I hesitated, but eventually shrugged. "Sure, why not?" She snapped a selfie with me and then slid into her car. Before she drove off, she rolled down the window and smiled at me. "See you around," she said. And just like that, she was gone. I had no idea that the next morning, my life would never be the same. I woke up to my phone blowing up with messages, calls, and notifications. Confused, I grabbed it, my eyes widening as I saw my name trending on social media. I clicked on a video, the same woman from last night, sitting in her now-repaired car. "This man," she said, pointing at me in the selfie she had taken, "helped me when I was stranded, asking for nothing in return. He didn't even know who I was. Just a kind, struggling mechanic with a good heart. And he deserves better." I scrolled down, my hands shaking. Thousands, no, millions of people had seen it. My business's page was flooded with messages. Then I saw the biggest shock of all. She had started a fundraiser for my shop, and the donations were through the roof. I couldn't breathe. Tears welled up in my eyes as I realized what had happened. She hadn't just left. She had changed my life. 2 days later, she walked back into my garage. This time, she wasn't a stranger. This time, I knew exactly who she was. And this time, I had no idea what she was about to say. I stood frozen as she walked into my garage like she belonged there. She wasn't dressed in designer clothes this time, just a simple sweater and jeans, but she still looked effortlessly elegant. "Hey," she said, smiling as if we were old friends. I was still reeling from everything that had happened. My shop, once on the brink of collapse, had suddenly become famous overnight. Orders were pouring in, people were offering help, and all of it was because of her. I finally managed, running a hand through my messy hair. "You did this." She tilted her head. "Did what?" I let out a shaky breath. "You posted about me. The donations, the fundraiser. My phone hasn't stopped buzzing." Her smile softened. "You deserved it." I swallowed, struggling to keep my emotions in check. "Why? Why did you help me?" She walked closer, looking me straight in the eye. "Because kindness like yours shouldn't go unrewarded." Something in my chest tightened. I wasn't used to people helping me. I wasn't used to being on the receiving end of kindness. "You saved my night," she continued. "I was supposed to attend a major event. If I had missed it, my reputation would have taken a huge hit. You didn't ask for anything in return. That's rare." I shifted uncomfortably. I don't like seeing people stranded." She smiled. "And I don't like seeing good people struggle." For a moment, we just stood there, the weight of her words sinking in. Then she grinned. "So, how does it feel to be famous?" I let out a breathy laugh. "Terrifying." She laughed, the sound like music. And just like that, I realized something. I like having her around. Over the next few days, things changed fast. Customers started pouring in. People traveled from different towns just to get their cars fixed at the famous Kind Mechanic's garage. Some just wanted to shake my hand. Others left envelopes of money without a word. For the first time in years, I didn't have to worry about where my next meal was coming from. And she, Ava Sinclair, the rising star of Hollywood, kept coming back. She didn't need repairs anymore, but she still found reasons to visit. "Just checking in," she'd say, leaning against my workbench as I fixed an old pickup truck. "Gotta make sure my favorite mechanic isn't overwhelmed." I roll my eyes. "You do realize you're way too famous to be hanging out in a dirty garage, right?" She smirked. "And you do realize you're way too famous to be fixing rusted-out trucks, right?" I laughed, shaking my head. "I like fixing cars." She grinned. "And I like watching you fix them." I swallowed hard, my heart doing something weird in my chest. This wasn't just gratitude anymore. There was something else between us, something I wasn't sure I was ready for. Just when I thought life was finally turning around, reality hit me like a truck. One afternoon, I heard someone yelling outside the shop. "Where is he?" "I know he's here." I turned, my stomach twisting into a knot. Standing there, red-faced and furious, was my old boss, the man who had fired me years ago and left me broke. "Still playing mechanic, huh?" He sneered, stomping inside. "Thought you'd be crawling back by now." I clenched my fists. "What do you want?" His gaze flickered to Ava, who was watching with a curious expression. His eyes widened in recognition. Well, he said, his tone changing. "Didn't know you had connections with celebrities now." "That explains a lot." Ava stepped forward, her expression hard. "And who exactly are you?" He smirked. "The guy who used to own this fool. He worked for me, until I fired him for being useless." I swallowed the anger rising in my throat. "You fired me because I wouldn't let you scam customers." His smirk faltered. "Doesn't matter. I built you. You wouldn't even have these skills if it weren't for me. And now, you're getting free money from some famous actress." Ava's eyes turned cold. "You think I just give money away?" "He earned it." "Yeah, right," he scoffed. "Let's see how long this lasts. Fame doesn't stick around, kid. Enjoy it while you can." With that, he turned on his heel and walked out. Ava exhaled sharply, turning to me. "Who was that idiot?" I let out a breath. "Someone I should have buried a long time ago." She studied my face for a long moment. "You don't owe him anything, you know." "I know," I said. "But deep down, I wanted revenge." The more my business thrived, the more I thought about that moment. That man had spent years making my life hell, and now he had the nerve to show up and act like I owed him something. I wanted to rub my success in his face. I wanted him to regret ever underestimating me. And Ava, she was starting to mean more to me than I ever expected. But there was one thing I still hadn't told her. something that could ruin everything. One night, Ava and I sat outside my garage, watching the stars. You never told me why you became a mechanic, she said softly. I hesitated. It was all I had. She turned to look at me. That's not the real reason. I swallowed. I had a brother. Her expression changed. He was a mechanic too, I continued. Taught me everything I know. But he died in a car accident. A customer he had helped for free. They hit him and drove off. Ava's hand found mine. I'm so sorry. I exhaled. That's why I never charge people who really need help. I don't ever want to be the reason someone gets stranded. If someone had helped him that night, he might still be alive. Silence stretched between us. Then Ava said something I didn't expect. You're a good man. I let out a breath. I don't know about that. You are, she insisted. And you deserve happiness too. I turned to look at her. And for the first time, I let myself believe it. Just when I thought life had finally given me a break, reality punched me in the gut. I was in the middle of fixing up an old Mustang when my phone rang. Hello. A deep voice sneered on the other end. So, you think you're somebody now? I gritted my teeth. My old boss. That snake wouldn't let go. What do you want? I snapped. He chuckled. Just thought I'd remind you of something. You owe me. I clenched my fist. I owe you nothing. That's where you're wrong, kid, he growled. You see, I still have connections. You think you're hot stuff now because some celebrity gave you attention? You think money's just going to keep flowing in? One word from me, and I can ruin you. I exhaled slowly. Try it. See what happens. He laughed. Oh, you've grown some teeth, huh? We'll see how long that lasts. Enjoy your little spotlight while it shines. The call ended. I stood there, my pulse racing. That man had made my life hell once. I had no doubt he'd try again. And this time, I wasn't sure if I could stop him. A few days later, trouble arrived. A man in a suit walked into my shop, holding a folder. You the owner? Yeah, I said warily. He smirked. You're being sued. I froze. What? He tossed the papers onto my workbench. Your old boss is claiming you stole equipment from him when you left. Says you've been using stolen tools to run your business. My stomach twisted. That was a lie. That's insane. I snapped. I bought all my own equipment. The man shrugged. Doesn't matter. He's got money. He's got lawyers. You've got a reputation that'll crumble the second this story gets out. I clenched my fists so hard my knuckles went white. This wasn't just about money. This was about destroying me. And the worst part? It was working. Customers started canceling appointments. People who had praised me days ago now looked at me with doubt. And then there was Ava. I hadn't told her yet, because deep down I was terrified. Terrified that she'd think I was just another liar. That she'd leave. That night I sat outside my garage, my head in my hands. I heard footsteps, then felt a warm hand on my shoulder. Aiden. Ava's voice was gentle. Talk to me. I looked up, my chest tightening. I'm being sued, I admitted. My old boss. He's trying to ruin me. She didn't flinch. Didn't pull away. Instead, she sat beside me. Then we fight back. I let out a bitter laugh. You don't get it. He's powerful. He's rich. He can make my life hell. She tilted her head. And what do you think I am? I blinked. Her expression turned serious. Aiden, I have power too. I have influence. And I don't let the people I care about get destroyed. My heart pounded. The people she cared about? You really want to get involved in my mess? I asked. She smiled. You helped me when you had nothing. Now it's my turn. I swallowed hard, emotion clawing at my throat. Maybe I wasn't alone in this fight after all. The next morning, Ava called her lawyer. Not just any lawyer, one of the most powerful in the country. Within hours, a legal team was ripping through my old boss's lawsuit, exposing every fabricated claim. But that wasn't all. Ava took to social media, telling the world what was happening. Remember the kind mechanic who helped me for free? She posted. Well, now a bitter man is trying to ruin him out of jealousy. I won't let it happen. And neither should you. Her fans went wild. Thousands of people flooded my shop with support. Customers who had canceled came back, angrier than ever at the man trying to destroy me. Then, the real bomb dropped. A journalist started digging into my old boss's past. And what they found? It was bad. Fraud. Tax evasion. Even cases of scamming customers. And suddenly, the man who thought he could bury me was about to be buried himself. A week later, the lawsuit was dropped. My old boss. He disappeared from the public eye, his company under investigation. And me? I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. People saw me as more than just a mechanic. They saw me as someone who had fought back against corruption. And at the center of it all, Ava. She had stood by me when I thought no one would. She had fought for me when I didn't think I was worth fighting for. And now, looking at her, standing in my shop with that warm, proud smile, I knew I had fallen for her. One evening, after closing the shop, Ava and I sat on the hood of an old car, watching the stars. I never expected this, I murmured. She glanced at me. Expected what? I swallowed. For someone like you to care about someone like me. She frowned. What does that mean? I exhaled. You're Ava Sinclair. You have everything. I'm just a mechanic who almost lost everything. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Do you know why I kept coming back here? I looked at her, waiting. Because, she whispered, for the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't just Ava Sinclair, the actress. I was just me. And you? You treated me like a person. Not a celebrity. Not a status. Just me. My throat tightened. You saved my night, she continued. And I saved yours. Maybe we were meant to find each other. My heart pounded. Before I could overthink it, I reached out and took her hand. She didn't pull away. Instead, she smiled. And just like that, I knew my life would never be the same again. For the first time in years, I felt like my life was heading somewhere. My shop was thriving, my name was respected, and Ava, the woman who had turned my world upside down, was still here. But deep down, I knew it couldn't last. She was a star, a real, untouchable star. And I was a man covered in grease, running a shop in a town she'd eventually leave behind. Reality had a way of reminding me where I stood. It happened one evening when she got a phone call. I was under a car, fixing the suspension, when I heard her voice grow tense. What do you mean they moved the shooting schedule? She asked, pacing. I sat up, wiping sweat off my forehead, watching her carefully. She ran a hand through her hair. That's sooner than expected. How long? A pause. Then her face fell. 3 months, she repeated in a whisper. 3 months. That was all the time we had left. When she hung up, she turned to me, her expression unreadable. I forced a smirk. Bad news. She tried to smile. Just work stuff. The filming for my next movie got moved up. I'll have to leave earlier than I thought. I nodded slowly, pretending it didn't hurt. Well, you're a big deal. They need you. She looked at me, almost as if she wanted me to say something else. But what could I say? I couldn't ask her to stay. She didn't belong here. A few weeks passed, and the closer her departure got, the more I felt the distance growing between us. It wasn't on purpose. She was busy preparing for her role, and I had my shop to run. But late at night, I'd lie awake thinking, was this just temporary for her? One evening, we sat in my garage, eating takeout like we always did. Are you excited about the new movie? I asked, trying to sound normal. She hesitated. I should be. I frowned. But she poked at her food. It's complicated. I exhaled. Ava, what are we doing? She looked up sharply. What do you mean? I put my food down. You're leaving in a few weeks. We haven't talked about what happens after. Are we just pretending this is nothing? She looked away. I don't want to think about it. Well, I do. I said, my voice tighter than I intended. I need to know if this meant anything to you. Her eyes flashed. Of course it did. Then what happens when you leave? I asked. Do I just become a memory? She swallowed hard. I don't know. Silence stretched between us. For the first time since we met, I felt something break. Maybe this was never meant to last. The night before she left, I stood outside the garage, staring at the sky. I heard footsteps behind me. Aiden, she whispered. I turned, and for a moment, we just stood there, drinking each other in. I don't want to go, she admitted, voice breaking. Then don't. She let out a tearful laugh. You know I can't do that. I nodded slowly. Yeah, I know. She hesitated. Come with me. I froze. She was serious. Leave this place, she continued, stepping closer. Come with me to L.A. You don't belong here. I let out a breath. Yes, I do. She swallowed. What? I took her hands, squeezing them tight. Because this is my home. I built something here. I fought for it. I can't just leave it behind. Tears welled in her eyes. I love you, she whispered. I felt my chest tighten. I wanted to say it back. I wanted to beg her to stay, but I couldn't. So instead, I kissed her. One last time, one last memory to keep. And when she pulled away, tears streaming down her face, she whispered, Goodbye, Aiden. Then she turned and walked away, and I let her go. The first few weeks without her were brutal. I kept busy, throwing myself into work, pretending it didn't hurt. But every time I heard the sound of a sports car passing by, my heart would race. Every time I checked my phone, I'd hope for a message that never came. She had moved on, and I had to too. Life went on. My shop flourished. People still came because of my story. But at night, when the world was quiet, I missed her, more than I wanted to admit. A year passed. I had convinced myself she was just a beautiful chapter in my life, a memory, nothing more. Then, one evening, as I was locking up the shop, I heard the familiar hum of an engine. I turned, and my breath caught. Ava stood beside her car, looking as stunning as ever. But something was different. She wasn't dressed like a Hollywood star. She wasn't hiding behind fame. She looked real, like the girl I had fallen for. "Aiden," she whispered, eyes glistening. I swallowed hard. "What are you doing here?" She stepped closer. I came back. I stared at her, my heart hammering. "Why?" She took a shaky breath. "Because no matter where I went, no matter how much success I had, it didn't mean anything without you." Silence stretched between us. Then she smiled softly. "You were right," she whispered. "This is home, and I don't want to run anymore." Emotions surged in my chest. I had spent a year trying to move on, but in that moment I knew I never had to again. I reached for her. She fell into my arms, and this time I wasn't letting her go.